Welcome to a special collaboration between Guardian and Thin Brew Line Coffee, where we merge our worlds to bring you an exciting new podcast experience.
Today, our guest is TJ Webb, a retired officer with the Milford, Delaware Police Department, who went on to share his story of surviving a critical incident wherein he was shot 6 times while on duty. TJ is the author of the book, Just One More. Now, TJ, I met you last year at the TAC Ops conference in DC and just thought that you were great. And before I met you, I was a little intimidated because you struck me as this kind of tough guy who wakes up at 3 a.m., works out 17 times a week. So I wasn't really quite sure how I was going to relate to you. But since meeting you, you've become a friend and an amazing supporter of my coffee company, Thin Brew Line. And so thank you for taking time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, TAC Ops, it's a great conference, and it was awesome to be introduced to you there and get on your coffee, which I'm hooked on now. So it's good stuff. Got my mug here you gave me, so happy with that. When Amanda's not stealing it from me, but yeah, appreciate it.
You're welcome. So TJ, before we drill down into some more specific questions that you might not get asked as often, give the listeners just a summary about your unique story.
Yeah, so I medically retired after 19 years. The last 2 years I spent in physical therapy, recovering from injuries, and it was because in my 17th year I was assigned to a fugitive task force with the U.S. Marshal Service, and doing an operation one night for an attempted homicide suspect. We ended up getting into a gunfight. I was shot 6 times in that operation. Took a round through my femur, my shoulder, 2 in my right arm, my hand. I had a ricochet off my chest, actually landed in my face here in my chin. And then spent about 3 or 4 weeks recovering in between the ICU and a live-in rehab facility. And then the next 2 years, outpatient recovery. Quick rundown there.
So tell us what the inspiration behind writing the book was, and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, so during my recovery, once I got to the live-in rehab, I kept a journal just of like my day-to-day, just because I wanted to keep track of physically and emotionally, spiritually, how I was feeling day-to-day. So if I had anything different, on today, which is, Friday, what's different from this Friday, from last Friday, and how I'm feeling physically and mentally. So it was kind of just a way to keep track of things and keep me on point with my mindset, right? And then after that, I kept doing that for a while, and eventually I was like, this is a book. I feel like I just got to fill in all the gaps, and that's kind of where it came in. The only thing I wanted out of it was to just share my journey and how I got through it, and the message, in hopes that somebody else can get something out of it, especially first responders. But I feel like it's something that, the message in there, I feel like it's something anybody can grab a hold of.
In the book, which is great, by the way, one of the early topics you talk about is being a canine handler, how that was the most rewarding part of your career, and your best partner, Hank.
Hank was, he was an asshole. I got him in, I think it was April of 2012, when I got selected to be a handler, and he was a German Shepherd. And when I first got him, man, I was scared to death of him. He was just this giant, vicious looking monster that I was like, holy shit, man. Like, I'm used to having like labs and stuff, So we had a rocky relationship starting out, and we got through training and hit the road, and ended up forging quite a bond there. And I had him for about 6 or 7 years until he passed away unexpectedly from physical problems he had. But yeah, it was a great, one of the greatest experiences I had in my career was canine. would say his bread and butter was tracking. He was a really good tracker, so we used him a lot in that. I had a track one time that I was really proud of with him. We had a home invasion one night. Guy got stabbed a bunch of times, and we got there on scene. The suspect fled on foot. We ended up doing a track, and the track ended up being a little over a mile. And then he tracked me right to the guy hiding in another housing complex. He was hiding underneath a car and took us right to the guy. The guy was covered in blood. He even had the knife with him and everything. So that was a real memorable incident that I had with him. But aside from that, he was just I feel like he was unique and he was special to me. We had a good bond, and I know we dealt with a lot of like large crowds. We had a lot of bars in town, and we'd always get large crowds on the weekends there, like, fighting and whatnot. And whenever I got him out of the car, he would always get so anxious. He would just kind of like keep looking up at me and kind of like not biting me, but like I call it love taps. He would just kind of like nibble on my leg or my arm a little bit, just like his nerves getting to him and his excitement, his adrenaline. And that was something now I look back and I kind of miss it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Did he ever be like calm in a situation when maybe you were maybe amped up a little? Because it sounds like you could kind of read his behavior. So did he ever kind of do the same for you? Because I think you used the word like emotions run through the lead as a quote. So did he ever do it for you? Runs both ways?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think it runs both ways. If he gets excited, it gets me excited, and vice versa. Because I mean, it's my job to keep him under control, right? So for me, it's most important for me to keep my emotions in check, which is going to help him. So whenever I see him get worked up on something, obviously, it gets me going a little bit like, shit, I got to dial him down now, which means I got to watch myself a little extra. So, but it was definitely a unique job, and it was one of those jobs where you're only going to get out of it what you put into it, and that's what I really enjoyed the most about it. So if you had a successful career as a canine handler, it's because you actually put in the work and did something about it.
Sadly, Hank unexpectedly died of cancer, and it's unfortunate that your department couldn't provide you with another canine partner. If you could speak to police departments across the country now, what would you say to try to convince them to utilize canines more?
Well, I mean, they're a great tool. I mean, that they can be used in any situation if you really think about it. And they save lives, not just officers, but the public. They're great. They're great tools for finding suspects, finding missing children, whatever it may be. And I would say when you get into a situation, like we use him on SWAT a lot, on our SWAT team to go in and clear houses for us. So, I mean, for me, I'd rather have the dog go into a situation and try to rectify it before we have to send one of our officers in there to get hurt, which is kind of a terrible thing to say because you're pretty much sending a dog in there to get hurt for you for the most part. I mean, in the reality, that's what it is, and it sucks. But they're a tool, but you try not to look at them that way sometimes because it's a living thing. It's your best friend, but at the end of the day, they're a tool, and they're a great tool to have. Yeah.
In your book, I was one kind of chapter that stuck out to me. You were talking about one of your first calls after Hank had passed, where a male subject that died, and you had to wait with his boys and had to inform their mother of the passing. And you said you took kind of a turn down a deep, dark hole where you were thinking of previous events, like friends that had passed, and just all of these emotions that have stacked up was starting to kind of overflow. What advice do you have for especially like new officers getting into the job on how to manage those experiences so they don't like stack up, overflow?
Yeah. So that was 2017. That was a tough year. I had a friend of mine that was killed on a traffic stop with gunfire. I had a co-worker, my shift mate actually, who was actually one of my oldest childhood friends. We were been friends since we were about 9 or 10. He took his own life, and then I lost Hank. And it was all like within like 3.5 months, like boom, 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 like they just one thing after another. And, it built up and I was having problems with it. So, the way to handle that is you got to talk about it. You got to be open with what's going on in your life and what's going on in your career as a first responder. Because if you don't, it's just going to bite you in the ass because the stuff's going to build up and you're not going to know how to handle it. And I did that starting out in my career for a long time in my career, probably up until I had these problems in 2017. And when my shift mate, when Sean took his life, that was kind of it for me. So I really started opening up more to my wife, which was needed. It was long overdue. And that's why I try to tell everybody when I go speak is, don't be afraid. There's this old saying in first responders, don't take the job home with you. You're taking the job home with you all the time, whether you go home and talk about it or not. You're taking the job home with you because you're taking your emotions with you. You might not be talking about anything, but your emotions are showing and your family's seeing that and your family's feeling that. And if you're not telling them what's going on, then they don't understand. They might think it's them that's the problem, and they're not. So it's opening up about what you have going on, especially on the job, is, to say it's crucial is an understatement. But that's my advice: is you gotta keep open lines of communication with, whether it's family, a close friend, coworkers, a professional, whatever it may be. You got to have something for an outlet. He's one of my dearest friends. He's one of my closest friends that I've ever had, and he and I still have great open communication with everything in our lives, not just work related, but in our personal lives. And same with my wife and his wife. They're very close. They talk about everything, and I think having a relationship with someone like that is it's incredibly important. And that's one thing that I'm very thankful to have both of them in our lives, because they've done a lot for us through the last 4 years, especially during the early stages of everything we went through with the shooting. And they've been there every step of the way. And, Mike wasn't there that night. And that's something that, he deals with, he feels bad not being there. Right. As I would too. But there's a reason that he wasn't there. This is because I needed him in another area of my life, right? I needed him to not be part of that incident because I needed him to help me through it. I needed his wife to be there to help my wife through it. And that's what I try to tell him all the time. And he understands that now. But to have people like that in your life is it's incredibly important, man. And they're incredibly important to me, yeah.
And all these years, over the last few years, like I assume you and Mike are still close and still stay in touch, correct?
Oh yeah, we talk probably almost daily. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We talk all the time. His wife and my wife talk all the time. We go out to dinner. So they're very, very close to them.
It's good to have those friends in our life, isn't it, TJ?
Incredibly important.
So take us back to the night of your shooting. After you were shot 6 times while you were being transported to the hospital, describe how you in your book, you described a mindset to keep, mentally preoccupied and just work through it. And you refer to it as look for work, that kind of a concept. So take us to that moment and tell us how that concept got you through that drive to the hospital and thereafter.
Yeah. So when I was shot and I was on the ground, I was kind of in a spot where I didn't know what to do. My right leg was broken. Both my hands were broken. So, there wasn't I couldn't grab my gun. I couldn't do this, couldn't do that. So I ended up crawling eventually and getting myself underneath the car where I could try to protect myself a little more from any further gunfire. And then from there to the vehicle, I was in the back seat of my partner's car, and it was the same thought process. I can't just lie here and do nothing. I gotta look for work. That's always been something I've said, is look for work. Just stay busy. Don't, be useful. And I had to be useful for myself in this moment, right? I couldn't just lay in the back seat. I had to keep my mind occupied to keep me in it. And I kept that mindset going forward. And when I ended up in the hospital, when I woke up a couple of days later, it was the same mindset. It was I gotta keep moving. And when I was in the live-in rehab facility, I had 2 1-hour sessions of physical therapy a day, and they were tough sessions, but it was 2 hours. So I mean, I still had 22 hours left in the day, and I didn't want to just sit in a hotel or in a hospital bed watching Netflix or something. You know, that's a waste of time. I got to find something. I got to look for work. There's always something to do. So I made the best of my time, and that's what I did. I would find things in the room to piddle around with my hand to try to get my fingers moving again, because that was part of my physical therapy. I would grab my walker and try to sit up and sit down on the edge of the bed to try to get my leg working a little better. Trying to do like little sit-ups in the bed to keep my strength up with my core, or whatever it may be. I was always looking for something to do, to keep, not just to keep physically going, but to keep my mind occupied and keep it from going down rabbit holes that, you know, something like that. It's not what you need.
Take me through real quick the evening when you get a voicemail from David Goggins. I listened to that, and I know David Goggins like content very well. You know, friends send me stuff like that all the time, but it's got to hit different when you're going through that recovery, and it's kind of unexpected.
Yeah, that was crazy, man. I was so that was Christmas Eve. I was in the live-in rehab for Christmas. So Christmas Eve, I had a doctor's appointment, and it was just a really shitty doctor's appointment, man. As far as like progress news goes, it just wasn't good. It kind of just deflated me. And I came back to the rehab facility. They transported me back, and Amanda was there, and I was just down and out. I pretty much sent her home, like, just go home, leave me here kind of deal, which was, you know, we didn't argue or anything. It was just like a bad situation, which I wrote about in the book. And then I was just kind of defeated, and I was like, I need something, man. Again, like, you gotta look for work. I gotta find something here. So I started, at the time I was watching, like, you know, YouTube videos of, like, you know, David Goggins and Jason Redman and whoever else I could find just to like keep me going. And I thought, you know what, man, I want to email David Goggins. I think I went to his website and saw like an email address. So I just sent like an email, like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm going through, blah, 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 blah. Literally thinking I'm never going to hear back from this dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's never going to freaking happen. And I put my phone number in there. I'm like, I don't know why. I'm like, he's going to call me, right? So sure enough, that was on Christmas Eve night. I woke up Christmas morning, and I checked my email, and I had an email back from that email address. And all it said was, check your email, motherfucker. And I was like, or no, I'm sorry, check your voicemail, motherfucker. And I was like, what? So then I go to my voicemails, and I see I got a voicemail, and I listened to it, and it's David Goggins. And you can use it in the QR code in the book. You can scan and listen to it if you have the book. But I'm sitting there listening to this voicemail from David Goggins on Christmas morning from a phone call I missed on Christmas Eve night, and I was just blown away, dude. Just totally shocked. And it instantly just threw me back on track. You know, I called Amanda that morning for Christmas, and my attitude was totally different. And it was something I probably would have got back on track at some point, I'm sure, but not that fast. It was just like instant, here we go. Because for him, you know, someone like him, dude, like as busy as that guy is, and all the people around the world that reach out to that guy on a daily basis, he actually read my email and took time out of his day on Christmas Eve night to respond to me. Like, that says something about that guy's character right there.
Yeah, and if you know his content, the voicemail was right on par, textbook, same energy.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like, why am I ready to run through a brick wall all of a sudden?
Yeah, dude.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I there's the same thing. Like when I read the email return he gave me, when I was reading it, I was hearing his voice saying it. You know what I mean? It's just incredible,
TJ,
man. Incredible.
TJ, how many times have you listened to that voicemail?
God, man, I haven't listened to it in a while. Probably a couple months ago was the last time I listened to it. But yeah, even to this day, like I'll pull it out if I'm having a bad day or whatever it is, and I'll still play it because I have it on my phone still. 4 years later, I still have it. But it was just a powerful thing, man. It's I'll never get rid of that thing. I've saved it on like 20,000 different hard drives, I think, so I don't lose it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Speaking of people, you reaching out to people and like Goggins getting back to you, tell me a little bit about the sign on the door and where that came from.
Yeah. So that first night I got to live in, they took me up to my room. It was me, Amanda, a couple staff members from the hospital, like administrators, and they're like, okay, we're gonna come back in the morning and give you a rundown of what to expect and this and that. You can't have visitors, but your wife can come up once a day. We'll make an exception. You can see your wife. I was like, okay. And so finally that night, I was in this room by myself for the first time. And this is day 7 since the shooting. And it's the first time I've had 1 second alone, because when I was in the ICU, I had cops with me 24 hours a day for security and stuff. So now I'm alone in this room, and it's like everything's like boom, just kind of hitting me. Like, what the hell is going on? Why am I by myself now? Am I going to be a burden the rest of my life to my family? And I started going down those deep, dark rabbit holes, man, for the first time. Didn't sleep much, and then about 6 a.m. My door opens up to my room, and I remember it was an in-swing door, and I remember the nurse opened it up to come in. I just remember that light from the hallway, just kind of boom, shining right in the room and hitting that door. And it's crazy how your brain will just like instantly remember stuff that you haven't thought about in forever, right? Just weird how like your body knows that you need this now. So it made me think back on a book that I read 6 years prior to this. It was called The Trident. And I went to a speaking event in Baltimore for the Patriot Tour, which they were doing at the time. It was like Marcus Luttrell, Taya Kyle, and Jason Redman. Goggins was there before he was actually Goggins, before people knew who he was. It's like the beginning of him. I didn't even know who he was when I got there. So he wasn't really popular. But anyway, I bought this book called The Trident. That was Jason Redman's book. And I won't get into Jay's story, but Jay was a SEAL and was severely injured back in 2007 and spent a lot of time in Walter Reed. And during his time in Walter Reed, he came up with this sign on the door, which was a sign that he made for his door in his hospital room as like a motivational tool, right? So I thought about that, and I was like, man, that's a really good idea. Like, I haven't thought about this guy or this book in forever, but here it is. It's a good trick. I'm gonna try it. So Amanda comes up for visiting hours at 8 a.m. and I was like, hey, I need a marker and some poster board. I'm gonna make this sign up. She was like, okay. So she gets the stuff I need, and I make up this sign, put a couple patches of mine on it, sign it the best I can, and slap it up on the door. And I had it up there for like 2 or 3 minutes. And then all of a sudden I had staff in my room like, what's going on? Who pissed you off? Like, what happened? It's like, I can assure you no one's pissed me off in the total of 12 hours that I've been here. This is just a motivational tool. And that's what it was. It was a motivational tool. It was what it was, which was a warning. It was a warning to people who wanted to come in the room. And it was a warning because I didn't want a pity party. I didn't want people coming in there, how you feeling, with these sad faces, I'm sorry this, I'm sorry that. I wanted an uplifting environment. I started every morning with music playing on my phone. I started every morning with calling my department at 0700 to do shift change with the guys, to have some sense of normalcy, and I let them know like I'm good. I just wanted to keep an uplifting environment the entire time, because anything else wasn't going to help me. And the other reason was I needed some accountability, right? So I knew every morning I woke up, the first thing I saw was going to be this sign on the door with the nurse coming in. And I knew if I didn't live my day by my words on my sign, then I was a hypocrite. And that was the last thing I wanted to be, was a hypocrite. I'm the kind of person, if I tell anyone to do something, I want to do it. And to me, this was like the ultimate, I said, I'm going to do this. I need to do it, which is get my life back together, right? So that's kind of where the sign on the door came from, was Jason Redman. I actually sent him a message on Instagram not too long after I did it, And the dude hit me back like boom, like instantly. And we stayed in touch. Even up to today, once in a while, we'll stay in touch, and he put a little bit in my book for me. And just a great dude, man. Stand-up guy. He's been there for me a lot, and yeah, just a great story.
All right, let's talk about your lovely wife, Amanda. I've
Mhm.
had the pleasure of speaking with her, and she's wonderful. And I really love that she's taking on the role of getting more engaged with the first responder community and talking about her perspective as the spouse of an officer who suffered, this injury like you did, and this massive recovery that you experienced, and which resulted in your medical retirement from your police department. In your book, you you talk about how Amanda was the compass and anchor of your family. So tell the listeners just how important she was to you during your recovery.
Yeah, so Amanda and I have always had a great relationship from the time we started dating. We got married, and we had our son Reese, and at the time when this happened, he was 7, and we lived with my in-laws, which was a good thing because it gave her a little extra help and some other things that we needed. But I was away for over 3 weeks, and she was dealing with not just the stuff at home with our son and his school and bills and everyone else that's contacting her, whether it be media or people from the police department and this and that. But she's also dealing with all the medical paperwork and process of where I need to go next and this hospital and that hospital and what surgeries I need to have. Like, she's doing all this stuff on her own, you know? And during all that, she's also dealing with processing all of this. Just like me, like this being shot 6 times didn't happen to me. It happened to us. It wasn't just my setback. It was our setback. And every time I talked to her or saw her, she just knew to keep her spirits high. And I knew that was really hard for her. I'm pretty sure that every day she left, she probably left in tears. Because, imagine seeing your spouse in that situation and then being stuck dealing with the day-to-day life on your own, and having to somehow explain to your 7-year-old son what's going on. So she had a lot on plate, especially with the school, and, understanding, so the school understands how she wants them to handle it. Everyone always comes to me, man, like, especially like at TAC apps and stuff when I go speak. I'm always hearing guys tell me, like, you're a badass, you're this, you're that, da, 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 which is, okay, great, thanks. But the real hero, the real badass is my fucking wife, man. Like, she is a true, just straight fucking savage for the way she handled all this and got through it. And still to this day, man, I would not have had the recovery I had physically or mentally if it wasn't for the support of her every step of the way. She's been an amazing wife, friend, partner. I mean, she's my go-to, man. Like, I couldn't do this thing called life without her. I don't think so.
So, like, as I'm reading the part of the story where the medics allow your son to be in the back with you, like, as a parent, it kind of pulled at my heartstrings some, because it would mean a lot to me. So I can't imagine how much it meant to you. But just talk about, like, how the medics, they allowed your son to be with you and kind of that alone time with him.
Yeah, so this was December 2020, so it's COVID. So when I was in the ICU, I couldn't have visitors, so I couldn't see Amanda, I couldn't see her son, I couldn't see my parents, anybody. But like I said, I had officers assigned to me every day, so I had that. And then when it came time for the transport, they were going to transport me from the ICU to the live-in facility. We went down, and I saw my son for the first time, and that was as frightening as it probably was for him. It was probably 10 times more frightening for me, because now he had to see me, wrapped up. My hands are all wrapped up like boxing gloves. My legs wrapped up underneath the hospital bed. I had long hair at the time because I worked undercover, so it was all everywhere. I'm frying it like profusely. You've never seen me cry before, you know. And I remember him just being like stone face, almost lifeless, because he was just probably shocked and scared and confused, I'm sure. And I remember the 2 ambulance guys were like, hey, it's like a 45-minute drive to the next place. Do you want your family to come on the ambulance with you? Because we'll allow it. And I was like, yeah, man, like, please, thank God. Because I didn't want to just say that was me, because that was gonna be the last time I saw my son for another at least 2 weeks, you know. So they let him on the ambulance with me, and it ended up being great because now I could actually like get my emotions together and then start being me again around him, so he can see like, oh, Dad's okay. Like, he's coming home sometime. He's just got some boo-boos we got to get fixed up. But you know, I got him laughing and smoking and joking, and definitely played a big role, not just for me, but I think it played a big role for him going forward over the next couple of weeks. Yeah.
So TJ, before we move on from family support, I want to ask you a little spicy question here.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to read my favorite line from your book.
Yeah.
And when I first read this, I laughed out loud. Like, I genuinely LOL'd.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to read it for those who haven't read his book, and people, you need to read this book. TJ is describing how he's in the inpatient recovery, the rehab facility, and you know, you're battling mentally, you're trying to recover, you're working with your physical therapist, and Amanda's coming in and visiting you, and you talk about, very candidly, you talk about the need to connect with your wife and to have intimacy, which, good on you, TJ, for being brave enough to talk about that in this book. I would never have judged you for a type of guy that would have talked about something this sensitive. So
Yeah.
I think that you really ripped the Band-Aid off of a topic that I would say first responders are really shy from wanting to discuss once they've endured a critical incident such as yours. So here we go. The true romantic I am. I used my walker to escort my bride into the shower room bathroom. Explain.
Yeah. So first I'll say initially there was no intention on putting that in the book until a conversation with my publisher. And the deal was with my publisher, it was like, hey, let's just put everything down, and on everything, every single little detail. And if we don't like the way it reads, we could always take it out. And it wasn't so much me as the hang up on it, it was Amanda, you know what I mean? So we ended up putting it in the book and went through like a couple little different versions of how it was written. And after Amanda's blessing, we put it in. And the reason we put it in there is because, one, I wanted people to see the human connection, the need for a human connection, right? You know, I didn't want the whole book to be about, you know, this. I didn't want the book to be about some cop who thinks he's some tough guy and he got shot and he did this and da 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 da. I want it to be real. Because I'm sure there's someone else out there who's done the same thing and they haven't told anybody, right? Mm-hmm. We're humans, you know, and I wanted people to read it and be like, oh man, they're real people. Like, cops do have feelings, you know. I mean, their spouses do have feelings. They actually have a life. They do things, you know, like, oh man, maybe there's somebody out there right now that read the book and they're like, oh my God, John, remember when you and I did that? That's crazy. Like, someone else did it too. But I just wanted I wanted people to be able to connect with it if they could. And I wanted people to just see the real, raw authenticity of what the situation was. That's really why we put it in the book. Yeah.
Well, good on you for convincing Amanda to put it in the book, because I'm sure that was no easy feat.
It was no easy feat. Well, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. But if she had any hang up on it. It wasn't going in there, but she gave it the blessing and we rolled with it. And the funny thing is, it's got to be like a popular part of the book, I feel, but no one ever wants to ask the question about it. Anywhere I go, nobody wants to ask about the reverse walker. Nobody wants to ask about it, which I think I wish they would, but they don't.
Why do you think that is?
I think people are probably afraid to ask. They probably think it's like too personal or something. But if it was too personal, it wouldn't be in the book, right?
Right.
That's my thing. I'm like, and my whole thing is, even if there's something not in the book, I always tell people, like, if you have a question that you want to ask me and you're thinking, I probably shouldn't ask that, that's the question you should definitely ask, right? Because you're going to get an answer that someone else has never gotten. And you're probably going to get an answer that no one's ever heard. So that's the way I look at it. I always tell people I wrote a book on this, so I'm an open book. Ask me. But for some reason, people just don't ask me about it. I think they're probably embarrassed to ask me. Maybe is my guess.
Okay, now I have a deeper question.
All right.
Is there a question you want me to ask you about that part that you wish someone would have asked you?
Ask me why. Why it happened.
Why did it happen?
Honestly, no funny story. I just wanted number one, I'm a guy. I'm a man, right? And as a man, we need things. But beyond that, I needed, as much as I wanted people to read the personal connection, I needed a personal connection with my wife. Like I missed my wife, and I know she missed me. And I just wanted her to know that I'm still here. I'm still me. We just got to work through some things. And, I just didn't want her sitting at home for days on end, weeks on end, thinking life's over. Like we're never going to be able to do these things again or whatever. Because at the time I couldn't walk at the time. I was using a walker to get around or a wheelchair. But I needed that human connection. And I think she needed that human connection. If she didn't, she wouldn't have agreed to it, But it was funny at the moment when I suggested it because, we're in a live-in rehab facility. She's like, if a nurse comes in, I'm like, we got the bathroom. They won't come in the bathroom. I'll just tell them you're in there, help me go to the bathroom. But I needed that connection with my wife because, as for me being in that situation, like there's all kinds of things going through your head, like what does she think about me now? How does she feel about me now? Is she going to feel the same? Is she going to feel different? Is she going to look at me different? And, deep down, I knew she wouldn't, but like, I needed my wife's love. I needed it, and being the great wife she is, she went with it because she knew I needed it,
You did a great job of describing that scene. It was very, very tasteful and respectful. Just so the listeners know, TJ's not writing the fourth installment of 50 Shades of Grey. That is not what happened.
Yeah, it was very tough, very tough.
But you did it in a really tasteful way. So, I really encourage people to read your book because you do such a great job of being honest and open about your need for your connection with your wife and how that aided you in your recovery process.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That was probably the hardest part of the book to write, and props to my publisher for helping me through that section because that was tough. I had no idea how I was going to word that thing, but she helped me out a lot with that one. So, but yeah, thanks for that.
TJ, it was so heartwarming to hear that while you were recovering, there was an outpour of community support, specifically through, food, cards, letters. You talked about how numerous local restaurants would drop off free meals routinely to your family. Were you surprised by how much love and support you received from the community?
Yeah, I was. Again, this is 2020, so on top of COVID, we got the whole anti-police rhetoric going on. And of course, I had just been to a shooting where someone was killed. And of course, we're all thinking, including Amanda, like, what the hell is going to happen here now, And no problems. The community was amazing. I I worked for the city of Milford, but I didn't live in Milford. That community was great. They did fundraisers for us to help us get through some things. And then the community that I live in, which is about a half hour away, they were amazing. We have a restaurant group down here that owns a number of very successful and high-end restaurants. So they're called Sodell, and they have a number of great restaurants. They had a point person reach out to Amanda and gave her a menu for all the restaurants. And they said, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, pick what you want every day, call this number, tell them what you want, and we'll have it delivered to you every single day. And they fed Amanda, my son, my in-laws, because we lived with them. And it was just great, man. The support that I had from the community was extremely unexpected. I don't say it in a bad way, like I wouldn't like it's a bad community. You just don't see that.
And I'm sure not everybody gets that.
Not everybody gets that. I'm after a lot of horror stories from guys I've spoken with at conferences and other podcasts, and I'm very fortunate for the support that I had from our community. It was just unbelievably amazing.
Did someone like organize that, or did it just kind of organically happen where everybody just kind of flooded with support?
There was a local guy. His name was Larry. He runs a project called oh shoot, I can't help it. Delaware Helping Warriors or something like that. I can't remember now. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he got on board, contacted, I think maybe someone at my department or maybe Amanda directly, I can't remember. And he ended up doing a lot of things like fundraising stuff. And if there's like, once I got home, he was like, what do you need for rehab? I was like, well, I need to get like a stationary bike. Like, boom, got me a stationary bike. Like, the guy was just amazing. He's on top of everything. So he orchestrated a lot of things that we needed and a lot of things that people did for us. I'm a big bourbon guy. So he actually orchestrated like a bourbon drop off, and people were dropping off bottles of bourbon to like the police department, to my house. I ended up with like over 100 bottles of bourbon. So,
oh my
I
God.
hope you still have some of that bourbon.
I have a lot of it still because I love bourbon, but I'm not like a big heavy drinker. So I have a lot of it. Actually, some of it I've given away to some buddies like as retirement gifts and stuff. But I remember getting those. Amanda was like really concerned when I came home because we all this alcohol in the house, and I'm on pain meds, so she was kind of freaking out for a while about it. But luckily, I've never had a problem with like any kind of addiction like that. Like the meds I was on, like I was off that stuff quick because I just can't stand it. And then the bourbon, we still have a lot of that around, and we dip in there once in a while.
I like that you highlight that in your book, though, because it's something simple that I think a lot of people would overlook as a kind and easy gesture that a friend, community member can support a family that's going through, such a hardship, such as you and Amanda did. And it was kind of a call to action for me because you and I both know of a current police officer who's kind of going through a really, tough medical hardship. And when I read that in your book and I put two and two together, I was like, okay, let me send this person, free, DoorDash some breakfast to them one day. And it's one thing the family doesn't have to worry about for that day is cooking breakfast for the kids and the adults don't have to figure out one thing that day, and taking that small stressor away. I think it's something simple that we can do, and it I think is impactful. So I'm glad you wrote about that in your book because that's inspired me.
Yeah. It was it was unbelievably helpful for sure, especially for I didn't get any of the good restaurant meals because I was locked away, but the family got them all. But I had people dropping off meals to me at the hospital too, which was cool. The hospital kitchen staff didn't like it too much. They're like, well, our food's not good enough. But so they got a lot of the restaurant meals, and then aside from that, my wife's gym, a lot of the girls in her gym were doing like meal trains and stuff. So we had food. So much food, and it got to the point where it was great. But Amanda was like, we gotta get back on like normal pace. Like she's like, I need to cook. I need to get things normal. So we ended up cutting it off eventually because also we felt bad, but it was just a great outpouring for sure.
I have two questions kind of related to the recovery journey. The first one I wanted to ask was, after you left the physical therapy clinic, you had your wife drive you by the site of the incident. Tell me mentally what that did for you.
Yeah, so got home, got released and got home on a Wednesday. The next day was New Year's Eve. So Thursday, get up, go to physical therapy that evening, and we drive by the parking lot of the shooting. And as we were getting closer, I just remember like kind of freaking out a little bit, like inside, like panic attack, and then same thing coming home, like a panic attack again. And I'm the kind of person, as you can probably tell from like my recovery, like I'm pretty like, boom, if there's a problem, like I'm on it. Like I gotta get it over with. I don't like having things just hanging out there, right? Like a disagreement with somebody, boom, we gotta attack it. We gotta work this thing out. I don't like things sitting there. And that's what this was. I knew that this parking lot I was going to drive by, not just every day I went to physical therapy, but the rest of my life, because this is where I live. I mean, I pass it every day to go anywhere. It's 10 minutes from my house. So the second day we went by it, I told Amanda, I need you to just pull in the parking lot. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about how that would affect her, like, because I'm stuck on me, and all my recovery. So we pull in the parking lot, and I think she was kind of like, oh shit, like second guessing if we should do it. But I told her, like, I pretty much demanded they pull in the parking lot. So we pull in the parking lot, and I tell her where to park, and I park just a couple spots from where I've been, and I just sit there for a few minutes in silence and just kind of chew on it, And the thought was, I need to do this regularly because this parking lot's not going to hurt me, right? The way I looked at it was, I owned the parking lot. I did not want that parking lot to own me, meaning I didn't want to drive by it every day the rest of my life and be in fear of it, or have to think back like, oh my God, I wanted to drive by it eventually where I don't even think about that parking lot, and I did that for a long time. And even to this day, I'll find myself in the parking lot just having a cup of coffee, checking emails. And it's not because I'm trying to beat it, because I feel like I have. It's more of like a victory lap when I go there now, where I can sit there and I'm at peace. I'm enjoying my coffee and writing my emails, or just kind of thinking about what I got going for the day, or just thinking about where I was 4 years ago in that parking lot to where I am now. So it's for me, it was a tactic that worked. I don't suggest everybody treat everything that way, because you gotta find what works for you, right? And the way it works for me is I gotta face things head on. I gotta just attack it and look for work, so to speak, again. But I think Amanda was a little rough with it in the beginning when I made her take me there. But I think it was, I don't know if it was equally as hard for her, but I think it was a little unsettling for her, for sure. You can ask her about that when you have her on later. But yeah, it was a tactic for me that was needed, and I'm glad I did it, and I still do it. So
with facing issues head on, especially like that, is it hard, or did you ever find it challenging to accept that help, first from like friends, but also like your own family?
To accept the help?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want help with a lot of stuff. I was offered help for everything I did, obviously, because people were just amazing, especially in my family. I took it when I needed it. I wasn't real foolish. I wasn't too foolish with my recovery, I guess, but I was maybe a little bit. But yeah, it was. I've always been like that anyway. I don't like accepting help from people. I like getting through things on my own. But again, that's me. Not everyone's like that. But for me, it worked. Like I had a friend, like Mike, who I wrote about in the book. My other partner that wasn't there. He had. So my in-laws' house is it's on stilts, because we live at the beach, so they're like close to the beach. The house is up on stilts, So getting into their house was thought to be an issue for me going upstairs. So Mike had it all set up where, hey man, I got this guy. He's going to put a chairlift at your in-laws' house. Your in-laws are okay with it. He's going to go out there and hook it up for free. Blah 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 blah. And I was like, absolutely not. This is before I got released from the rehab. And I was like, I appreciate it. I love you. I don't want a lift. When I get out of rehab, I'm walking up the steps to my house. That's how I'm getting in. I'm not going up there in a lift. So like things like that. Whereas some people probably thought I should have taken it, but for me, that wasn't helping me get better. That was enabling me from working my way up those steps. That's the way I looked at it. That's the way I processed it in my mind. So that was a good example of help that was offered, and I was just like, nah, get out of here with it. I didn't mean to hurt Mike's feelings with it because I know he put a lot of work into it, but that's what I felt was best for me at the time. Was I needed to struggle. I needed that struggle in order to get where I needed to be.
Well, was that the 13 steps you talked about in the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then last question about the kind of recovery journey. You incorporated your son Reese into your recovery process, doing little daily jobs.
Yeah.
You know, he was a part of it. He described it as fun, which definitely sounds like something a kid would say. So what effect did that have on you? And what do you hope that your son learned from that experience of being able to help his father?
Yeah, so I started him. So at the time when I was recovering, you know, I couldn't see anybody when I was in the hospital. So when I got home, of course, everybody wants to come over and see me, and you know, everyone's coming over and see me, and we're all, you know, most of them are cops, so we're all talking about this and talking about that and talking about the incident. And you know, I'm not thinking about anything, but he's overhearing all that stuff, you know, and I didn't take that into consideration. So one day when I realized that, I pulled him aside, and he was, like I said, he was 7 turning 8 in that time frame. I pulled him aside and just had a conversation with him about what had happened, you know, in a way that he could understand in my own words, and showed him, you know, the bullet holes that I had, which, you know, they're healed up pretty much by then. They're not like movie bullet holes. It's not like that. And I wanted to incorporate him into my recovery because I thought this will help him, right? He's like that anyway. He likes to help and everything. So giving him like little things to do, like helping me get my leg up on the bed, or help me get my coffee, or make a sandwich, or even going on runs with me. I felt like that helped him a lot mentally and emotionally because it gave him purpose. You know, I made him feel good that he's helping Dad get better again. And I feel like doing that really, it really made a difference. I feel like going forward throughout that whole process, even like to this day, I feel like that was a real turning point for his recovery, you know? Yeah. So out of everything I did, that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, is actually including him in that process. I feel like he got a lot, even at such a young age. I feel like he got a lot out of that he still takes today.
And I'm sure he wanted to be useful, and he wanted to help, especially not being close to you while you were in the recovery center and during your time in the hospital because of the COVID restrictions. So I'm sure that really helped him feel good about giving back to you as well. So I think that's actually a really fabulous parenting technique that often might get overlooked because parents don't want to burden their children, but maybe their kids really do want to contribute more than what some might think. And it sounds like Reese definitely appreciated that you leaned on him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wanted him to see what hard work could do. You know, that was my main goal. Well, other than like I wanted him to be mentally okay, I wanted him to see what hard work was. You know, like I had goals, and I went into this whole process knowing I was going to hit my goals. You have to go in, if you have a goal, you have to go into it knowing you're going to hit it. Because if you go in there questioning yourself, it's just not going to happen, right? So I was confident in my ability, but I wanted him to not just see it as time went on. I wanted him to be part of it, where he could actually like feel it. You know, does that make sense? Especially like going for runs. Like he would come to me, like when I started getting back into running, I ran a lot. And if I went for a run in the morning and then in the afternoon it rained, I'd go for another run because I hate the rain. So I would force myself to go run in the rain. It sounds kind of crazy. But I remember one day it was like pouring outside. He's like, "Did you run yet today?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's raining out." And I was like, "You want to go for a run with me?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right." So like we're going for a run in the rain then, like, and that was fun for him too, but to see him want to go do that, like who wants to go run in the rain? Maybe a kid does, I guess. I don't know, but
Reese does.
I feel like, yeah, Reese does. Yeah. And I just, it made me proud to see how he handled the whole situation.
So moving past recovery, you accomplish your goal and run a marathon.
Yeah. So it was a 2-year, they were giving me a 2-year recovery process, which they were pretty close to, for my hands at least. They told me I probably wouldn't be able to run again, start running again, for 18 to 24 months. And again, I don't like being told I can't do something. That was probably one of my downfalls at work. If I ever had a downfall at work, it was like being told by the admin I couldn't do something. You know what I mean? So when I got home from the live-in rehab, the first couple of days I was home, I signed up for a half marathon, and I wanted to run. The reason I chose a half marathon is because that was my favorite race to do. Like I've done Ironmans and stuff, but the 13 miles is my favorite thing to do. And the closest one to sign up for was in November. So it's been 11 months. So my goal was to run one in under a year, just so I can kind of look at the doctor and say, "I told you so." So, and that's where Reese came in to start running with me and stuff. So eventually November came, and I went out and ran that half marathon, and I ended up running the fastest half marathon I ever run in my life. And it was one of the most, I remember crossing the finish line, man, and it was like one of the most strange, not one of, it was the strangest feelings I ever had in my life. Because it was, I fell on the boardwalk where the race finished on the boardwalk here at the beach. And I remember collapsing when I got to the finish line, crying. And think about every emotion I could have possibly have had in that 11 months. Fear, anger, hate, happiness, sadness, frustration, like anything you could imagine. It was all just kind of boiling over or exploding at like one time. And it was really strange, but like amazing feeling. And I knew I was like, I'm never going to have this feeling again. I literally just did what a tons of people just told me I wouldn't be able to do. So 2 weeks later, I ran another one, and I ran that one slightly faster. And I just kind of got hooked on that for a while. So I kept doing some things like that. April came, and I did the Goggins Challenge, which is 4 miles every 4 hours, so 48 hours, so 48 miles. I did that with my neighbor. And then June came, I did a half Ironman, which was 70 miles. And I just kept going from there and doing things like that. And every year I try to find something to do even now, like I'll try to find something to do every year just to kind of keep myself going, keep my mind right, keep me pushing myself. And it's the kind of way I live now.
As we read in your book, your frustrations with the Delaware's laws for law enforcement, disabilities pensions motivated you to impact state legislature. So tell us what and how you did that, because that's no easy task either.
Yeah. So about a year out from my retirement, I didn't know I was retiring yet. I didn't know if I was going back or what, but I got to look for work. So I started looking into the disability pension that we have here for law enforcement and studying that. And I found where there's a salary cap. So you retire, you get your disability pension over here. If you're allowed to get another job, because it depends on your disability, you can get another job, but you're capped on your income. So every $2 you go over that cap, they take $1 out of your disability, right? So if you go 20 grand over your cap, they're taking 10 grand out of your disability the following year, right? So you're getting penalized for making a living, And I just thought, man, this is like the most unfair thing I've ever heard of in my life. If I would have just retired at 20 years, I get my whole pension, but I get shot, have to retire, and now you're taking money away from me. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Now, where I had help with this is Mike's wife, Kim, is a lobbyist. So we were discussing it with her, and she was like, I can help you with this. Obviously, I'm a lobbyist. So she started putting me in contact with some legislators and local legislators and stuff, and started working on rewriting the Disability Act, the disability pension, and ended up getting passed through the Senate and the House, having the governor sign off on it. And from that day forward, it's been changed, and it helped out a lot of people going forward, not just cops, but firefighters too. We've had some firefighters that it affected. So that was probably something that I'm really proud of. And what really bugged me about it was, it was something that was written in there back in like the early 80s. And I'm like, all these guys have retired over all the decades and no one's ever thought to say something about this. Like, that kind of bothered me. You know what I mean? So I feel bad for the guys that actually had to retire and live off of that, because it didn't go retroactive. It started from the date that the bill was signed. But that was something that we're really proud of. It definitely made a huge difference for a lot of people, and it will make a difference for a lot of people going forward. So, yeah.
I think that's a big testament to, if you don't like something, change it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Last question by me. I was curious if you had one particular mentor in your law enforcement career, or multiple, or if there's still a mentor to this day that you talk with.
Yeah, actually, one of my best friends, man, Shane. He was my sergeant for quite a while. He's quite a bit more time on than me. He probably got, he might have like 8 or 10 years on me. He was one of my good friends as I was on the job, ended up becoming my sergeant, and he was someone that I always looked up to for advice, for how he conducted himself on the job, not just with other officers, but with civilians, and even to this day, I'll get advice from him for things, and vice versa. He's seen how far I've come now. He'll call me for some advice on things, and I think it's a mutual thing there with us. But he's definitely someone that, out of everyone I've worked with, I would say he's the one that I've looked to the most for advice. As far as the job goes, 100%. Yeah, he's a great guy, great officer, great leader, and I took a lot away from him.
Fishbowl segment time.
Okay, all right. I like it.
Do you know the story behind this?
No.
Oh, this is great. You'll love it.
In this fishbowl are a bunch of random questions.
Oh, yeah.
So give us your best answer, okay?
All right, let's see.
All right. Would you rather have a 1-minute conversation with your past self or your future self?
Ooh, man, that's a really good question. Never heard that one before. Let me think on that one for a second. Past or future? I think I would. That's tough, because you could do a lot with both. I would say the future. And the reason I say that is because as time goes on, you tend to forget things, right? That old saying, don't remember where you came from. And I'm no different with that. So I would say my future. If I could look, 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future, I would go talk to myself and remind you, like, hey, man, remember where we came from. Remember everything that you went through to put you where you are today. And what are you going to do to keep that going? Or what are you going to do to get back to where you need to be? I think that would be what I do, the future.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't think I would go back and talk to the past, because everything that happened in my past, or your past, like whoever's, good or bad, that puts you where you are today. Right. So I go back and change it.
Agreed. So TJ, what's next? What projects do you have on the horizon?
Well, still working with the public speaking. I like that a lot. I really enjoy it. Trying to get in some more conferences. We're getting ready to start our own home defense company here. Amanda and I. So I'm looking forward to that, going over home security, cameras, all that kind of stuff, CQB tactics in your house, escape plans, things like that. So we're getting ready to launch that hopefully in March. So that's the whole learning a new business thing. The whole public speaking thing is a business, and the book's a business, but this is a whole different kind of a business here. Like, as you understand, running a coffee company, it's a lot of learning here. So we're learning as we go, but we're excited to get that rolling out here soon and see what we can do with it. So that's the next thing on the horizon here.
I love it. Well, I'm excited for that journey, and I look forward to hearing more about that. Well, TJ, it was a pleasure having you on as a guest, and we appreciate you sharing your incredible story with us. And we look forward to seeing you at the TAC Ops conference in May, and that's going to be in Jacksonville, Florida. And so we just, from Brandon to me, thank you for all your hard work and service to law enforcement. And I know that your story is going to continue to inspire others, and you should be really proud of that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on and give me some questions, listen to a little bit. You guys had some great questions, so I appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to maybe doing it again sometime.